I might actually believe you.
Run your attention for a second. We're going to be starting in 2 minutes. If you're live, we'll have people come on virtually. So just to let you know, we'll have a camera on you. So make sure that you're well behaved. If you have a question, we have a microphone. This is for the people virtually here, not for the people in the room. So, but I think you'll enjoy the meeting. And 1 minute, and then Bernadette will be in charge. She's in charge now.
Yes, I remembered the play School Hammer today.
I think it's going to catch the whole word.
Waiting for Lisa to tell us it's 7 o'clock.
Well, you know what, the people will start coming on. Virtually.
You ready, Ray? Can we go?
Just ask Amy if there's anyone there virtually. Oh, they're starting to come in now.
Okay.
You can start to talk. You can start to.
Okay, I found somewhere. Call the meeting to order. Flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Greetings and salutations, and a big Morris County welcome to everyone this evening. Here is the meeting by the numbers. We have 38 people here in person and 36 virtually. The following counties are represented: Morris, Burlington, Mercer, and Hunterdon. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Before we get to tonight's main event, which is current legal issues facing school boards, presented by Mr. Andy Brown, a member of the law firm Adams, Gutierrez, and Laddie Bedore, I'd like to thank Dr. Tim Purnell and his NJSBA staff for organizing and providing an incredible workshop experience for all attendees last week. This was our first in-person workshop since 2019, and we were promised it would be amazing, and it was. Once a year, board members have the opportunity to come together with superintendents, BAs, vendors, and fellow board members to learn from each other, network, provide valuable training opportunities, and build lasting relationships. This year, I attended my 25th workshop, and it did not disappoint. Simply put, it was a job well done by all. For those of you who did not have the opportunity to attend this year, I highly encourage you to start planning now for next year's workshop. If you do not already have October 23rd to the 26th, 2023 on your calendar, get it on there. Those are the dates. I promise you it will be everything and more. To sum up the workshop experience, I'd like to read President Irene Lefebvre's closing president's message in School Leader magazine regarding workshop. When we say our farewells at the end of the 3 days of workshop, 3 days filled with training opportunities, swapping ideas with other board members, and individual group meetings, we will leave exhausted but invigorated and with a renewed commitment to providing and improving educational opportunities for all our students in our districts. So again, get those dates on your calendar for next year. Now I'd like to congratulate and wish happy birthday to our school board magazine, School Leader. It's been in publication for 50 years and has offered news, guidance, and resources for all its readers. I'd like to point out a few articles in School Leader's Fall 2022 edition. For those of you in negotiations, there's an article on trends and collective bargaining negotiations. Then my favorite section is questions from the field with answers. And most importantly, there's an article on tackling the school teacher shortage. There's also a very informative article titled "Contentious Times Require Doses of Collaboration and Mutual Respect, a Pioneering Program which promotes union management partnerships." And for those of you who did not have the opportunity to meet and greet and chat with Dr. Tim Purnell at workshop last week, there's an article titled "Pivot Points: How Dr. Purnell Finds the Best Decisions Come from the Crowd." It's everything you need to know about our exceptional leader who has taken over the reins of NJSBA. And now a few reminders. Our next county board meeting will be January 25th. It will be completely virtual. We will have 3 breakout sessions. One will focus on the board agenda. The second will be understanding and interpreting the board secretary and treasurer's report. And the third breakout session will be best practices, student achievement, and staff recognition. I look forward to seeing all of you on my little window screen on the iPad on January 25th. Also, our March 29th meeting location is still being determined. However, we have a change of content. We will be inviting all our Morris County Unsung Hero nominees to come and be recognized. More on that to follow. Also, our May 4th meeting now has a confirmed location. It will be Hanover Park Regional High School, and it will be our Student and Board Member Award Recognition Night. Again, more to follow. I do want to point out that our Morris County Awards and Recognition Committee met this week, and they are moving forward with a bigger and better celebration planned. Again, anyone wishing to come or become part of this very unique and important committee, please email me. Rob will put my email up in the chat room. And finally, to all our current and prospective board presidents and vice presidents, after reorganization 2023, Morris County School Boards Association will be putting together a program for board presidents and vice presidents on how the role of the board president differs from other board members, and will focus on your additional duties centering on being a communication conduit, building consensus, and hold on, and encourage open expression of opinions by extending fairness and courtesy to all. We will also take the opportunity to discuss what's going on at the local, county, and state level. I look forward to working with our county field rep, Charlene Peterson, to provide this valuable training for our presidents and vice presidents. I would also like to bring to everyone's attention the flyer that you were handed in person tonight when you signed in. If you can take this back to your districts, it's NJSB's sponsored student film category in the Garden State Film Festival, New Jersey Hometown Documentary Short. Those of you who attended our our June student celebrations last year, Morris County had a winner, and we were treated to see the film, and he came with his family, and it was a very wonderful opportunity. The Garden State Film Festival, artists like the New Jersey Motion Picture and Television Commission and the New Jersey School Boards Association created the Hometown Documentary Series, and is looking for New Jersey school documentary films that are works written and directed by students. The films must focus on some aspect of the student's hometown that profiles an interesting person, place, time period, or subject related to the arts. Winners will be showcased at the prestigious 21st Annual Garden State Film Festival and receive all the benefits of selected filmmakers. This flyer, Rob will put it up in the chat room for those of you who are here virtually and don't have it. But this is a great opportunity, and I hope that we get a winner from Morris County again. Okay, we're going to move on with the rest of the meeting. At this time, it gives me great pleasure to call up Ray Pinney, the NJSB Director of County Activities and Member Engagement, to present the School Leader Award winner presentation. Ray? Let me take my hammer.
I wasn't going to use it. I just want to reiterate one thing. Workshop was, we haven't had it in 3 years. So you kind of forget about the human touch and how important that is to have those face-to-face meetings. And even I, who love all the county meetings, I came out really energized. And I forgot how energizing it is. Even though you're completely tired, you're energized at the same time, which is kind of unusual. So I'm looking forward to next year, and we'll have an extra day next year. And I'm glad you reminded me because I didn't have it on my calendar, Bernadette.
I'm here for you, Ray.
So I have the School Leader Award, and School Leader, as Bernadette talked about, is our magazine. And we like to promote best practices. And we had 6 of them throughout the state. One of them happens to be from Morris County, Mendham Township. It's a very timely program. I'm going to have them describe it because I wouldn't be able to describe it as well as they could. So I'm going to ask Hillary Clark, the counselor from Mendham Township Elementary School, and I have Julianne. I don't know if you're Julie. Oh, there you are in the back. Okay, Kochko, the principal, and they have their program is called the school's mission to create a positive school culture and climate. And I guess you should talk about it first before we give the. You can come right here.
Sure.
Come right here.
We'll share the podium.
I
Go
can
right
do
ahead.
that
No,
too.
Come right in because the camera's on this. So
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you to Ray and Bernadette and Peter for inviting us out tonight and joining you this evening and having a chance to talk to you a little bit about our program. And we're very honored and surprised to receive that recognition, but certainly very timely in the wake of a 2.5-year pause and difficult situation with the pandemic. And I don't think any of us going into what we were experiencing over the last 2.5 years really understood the impact of what was going to happen to our schools, not just operationally or instructionally or academically, but how that was going to impact our children's mental health and how that interruption really stunted their developmental growth. You were just mentioning, boy, it was really great to get back together again at school boards and be able to do workshop and all of that. Well, as an adult, of course, we need that extremely to be healthy. But when you're talking about 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds, it's not a choice. It's a very important part of their development. So back in about 2019-20, just on the precipice of what was slowly starting to come to us during the COVID pandemic, we engaged in an effort to learn how to create a very comprehensive school-wide culture and climate initiative that would focus very heavily on social emotional learning. And so we looked at best practices, what's out there, what's happening to, in schools. And there was kind of a little inconsistency what existed. So we decided that we were going to reach out for some additional help. We engaged in working with the School Culture and Climate Initiative out of St. Elizabeth. We started working with them. There was a 3-year plan that we were going to engage in with them. And that was when we started realizing, okay, we need to find out a little bit more about the status of our kids. And then COVID, and then shutdown, and then, all of what has happened from there. But what we were able to do is take a little snapshot by collecting some data with the help of the School Culture and Climate Initiative Assessment Lab. And they helped us to get some survey data out from all of our stakeholders, students and our teachers and our community members. And based off of that helped us to design, I think, the direction and where we were going to go over the next few years. So we started laying the foundation. And I'm so glad the timing worked the way it did, because as our children began to come out of the lockdown and we started to open the school back up again, and we did reopen that fall. So we were shut down for the 4 months. We did reopen, not in the way that we're used to. There was a lot of changes and a lot of restrictions and a lot of operational and management things that were impacting our teachers in an emotional way, and also our families and the children. And what we realized right off the bat is how not school ready the kids were. And so we had to do some figuring out very quick. In order for us to be able to reach the levels of academic success that we're always trying to shoot for, that we all are trying to shoot for, I have to make sure that I'm really addressing that whole child. And so we really focused in on making sure that we could help our kids to get to a place where they're available to the learning. And I'm not going to say that we are finished with that in any way. What I know is that we're moving in the right direction. We're implementing pieces of our program that are having gains in the way of social emotional connections, in the way of relationships, specifically in the way of self-regulation and being able to build positive relationships, all based off of research-based techniques through like the Castle 5 and the responsive school model. So we're using all of those tried and true research-based practices that are already out there and they've been around a long time, but now we're really starting to look at them and build it into the normal elementary school program. And I think that's what I wanted to convey to you, is that this isn't an ad hoc program. It's not something special. It's not an after-school enrichment. It is now really embedded into the elementary program. And with that came a lot of changes that I really had to look at too, like the master schedule. You know, if you're going to build a responsive classroom model, if you're going to build that positive school culture with lots of interactions with kids and listening to student voice and all of those things, then I may have to change the operation of the building. I may have to change the schedule a little bit, or a lot in our case. And so one of the things that Hillary has brought to the table with us as well is helping us to implement something called the morning meeting, which many of you might have heard of. You know, it's not something new, but really implementing those 4 components in the morning meeting and doing it justice and making sure that not just one classroom participates in that all classrooms, pre-K through 4 in my building, from 9 to 9:20, we're in morning meeting. And that means that the whole schedule gets changed around so that 9:20, that's when we start our instructional. So that was a very big change, but we decided to put our eggs in all of that in that basket because we felt like that was going to produce some of the greatest gains with some of the big systemic changes that we were hoping to make. So there's a lot of layers, I think, to a very successful social emotional learning program. It's not just teaching a counseling session when they go into the classrooms and teaching them about bullying or things like, it's not just about that. It's direct instruction. Yes, it's having a curriculum. And New Jersey has very good guidelines to follow that basically follows the Castle 5 and those 5 competencies. But it also then you have to start looking at your structures and am I allowing for the things that we're hoping to get out of kids? Time, what they're doing at certain amounts of time. One of the other pieces that Hillary brought to the table this year is the quiet corner, and not just in one classroom, but in all. So in every space, there's a quiet corner, and there's specific things that's used for: resetting, teaching the tools that help kids to be able to reset, breathing techniques, visualization, all kinds of things that we all know as adults, like we probably do that ourselves, but the children don't know how to do that. And they don't know how to regulate or help themselves get to a better place. So that's another big piece that now school-wide we've implemented as well. And we're still moving along. The teacher buy-in to something like that is relatively, knock on wood, relatively easy, because the teachers are the boots on the ground educators that are with the kids all day long, that experience all the stresses and different things that are happening, and they're trying to get the kids to learn. So they want to do things that are going to unlock that for the kids. So for us, the teachers in my building, as soon as we started talking about doing this, they're like, yes, 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 let's do this. Let's do this. How do we do it? And so that was part of our big job, was like, how do we do it? How do we get this happening? But having your teachers is a big part of the progress that you can make in your own district, so that they can be a part of the planning, be a part of the design of where you're going, what you want to accomplish, how you want to measure that along the way, because you want outcomes. You know, you want to hope that all the things you're doing are actually going to make an impact. So, I'm hoping, I'm certainly not here to say that, this is the best way to do something, but I think that it's research-based. We've got a good system in place. We're trying to attend to all the pieces. And I'm very excited about evolving into next year, where we are looking to now construct a health and wellness center in our building that will be designed just for being able to do small groups, sensory integration, play therapy, like different types of approaches that are different from just going into the classroom and doing a guidance lesson that you might be used to hearing. So another level. And when people, I'll leave you with this, when people might say, well, why do you want a SEL program? What's that? We're just teaching kids about feelings and all those types of things. I would say that, if we're not attending to this part of the child, we're not doing them justice, no matter what. Because if you want that high achievement, if you want them to learn, if you want that, they have to be available to do it. And so we have to do everything we can to get them in a place where they can maximize that learning. So I thank everybody very much for allowing us to be here and be available for any questions if you have them.
Thank you very much, ladies, and congratulations. Congratulations. I just want to say that their program will be featured in School Leader magazine in its next issue, so you guys can learn a little more about that. So at this time, we're going to present them with their plaque, and we need a picture. Peter and Irene, come on up. Ladies, you're front and center. Peter. I just want to show everybody their plaque. Thank you. Good plaque. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on with the rest of our meeting. At this time, I am going to call up Irene Lefebvre, who is the current New Jersey School Boards Association president, immediate past president of the Morris County School Boards Association, and the president of the Boonton Board of Education. Irene will be giving us some updates from the field. Irene? We're efficient, Irene.
I was supposed to ask you about workshop, but we already covered that. I will say that that everybody who participated should be thanked, because it's not easy to take that much time off from work. I know that. I know how hard it can be to arrange to have your young children taken care of, or your older children supervised, or your husband's or wife's meals arranged while you head out to go to workshop, to say nothing of having to convince your boss that it's worthwhile experience. So I think that everybody who went and had to make difficult arrangements in order to be there deserves a pat on the back. So pat yourselves on the back and say thank you. Okay? All right. I'll try to follow up on our illustrious leaders' calendar assignments here. Okay. I think you probably all know that the delegate assembly is November 19th. Okay. Every board has, that this is a lot of this is we're preaching to the choir. We determine the association's position on educational issues and establish the bylaws that govern its operation, and elect the New Jersey School Board Association officers. Okay, you already know that. We're not electing officers this time. We elect officers in May. All right, so that's part of the process. Every district board has a representative of a delegate and an alternate. So make sure that if you are not the delegate to the delegate assembly, that you discuss at your board meeting who is and whether they're attending and whether they understand what's going on at the meeting. They should get information ahead of time and make sure that they discuss that with the board, or the board president discusses it with the board. Because it's not good to send a delegate to the delegate assembly who has no idea what their board wants them to think or say or do. Okay, so sometimes they're thinking for themselves. but sometimes they're representing the board. And if it's a matter in which they have to represent the board, it's good if the board has at least discussed the topic, okay? Those of you that are nodding your heads have been in the position of knowing that that's important, okay? So that's something that's important. Other than that, if you have people on your board who have not finished their required training, Gov 2, 3, and 4 will be taking place virtually on November 14th from 7 to 9. Okay, so that's a possibility. And for anybody who's interested in it, for newly elected board members, so if you, after the election's over, if you have newly elected board members, or anybody who's not newly elected but is interested, there will be a training session called the 3 Rs, the roles, responsibilities, and resources that all board members need to know about. Go ahead.
Well, hold it. I didn't hear you first.
Dick Bruno, Harding Township. Question is, what if you don't do the training?
Okay,
I
so
mean-
if you don't do the training,
Yeah.
okay, at whatever level, but they do spend a lot of time focused on new board members, but at any level, if you don't do the training, the ethics committee can remove you from your board or can sanction you. They can do anything as little as slap you on the wrist and as much as remove you from your board if you
Thank
don't
you.
do your training, okay?
I will add that this past year, they have suspended board members.
Yes,
Until they finish it. So they can't participate in board business for a month
or more.
if
Right.
they were late.
And that gives them a month to get caught up. And if they get caught up, then they're restored to their board. And if they choose not to, then they end up losing their seat on the board. Okay, so it is serious. And we have been, as an association, we have been encouraging the ethics committee to be proactive and not wait around till, forever to take these actions, to follow the rules. It has to be done within the year. It has to be done in an efficient manner. So
Just to follow up on that.
Feel like Phil Donahue.
Is someplace in a data system where every board member and their
Yes.
record is?
Yes,
And does the board member get notified that you're behind?
Your board secretary, who in most cases is also your business administrator, but your board secretary gets notified. And then your board secretary notifies through the president or directly notifies the board members. Okay, so yes, there is a record kept. We have a lot of important stuff coming up, so I'm not going to waste your time going through a whole bunch of stuff. The board of directors meeting takes place on November 4th. That's this Friday night. It's being held in person, but there is a virtual component to it for people who don't want to drive to Trenton and drive home at 11 o'clock at night. Yeah, everybody likes to drive home at 11 o'clock at night, so. So that's something if you are on the board of directors. The only other thing that they asked us to talk about a little bit is one of the things that a lot of board members don't know is that New Jersey School Board Association has a grants support service. Okay, and this past, in the recent year, they have helped local boards of education procure close to $1.8 million in grant funding. And if you're not a board that's taken advantage of that, you might want to. So included in your NJSBA membership is basic grant support. That doesn't mean they're going to come in and write your grant for you and do all the work, but there's basic support. As a membership benefit, provides real-time access to searchable database of current federal, state, and foundation grant opportunities, email alerts of new opportunities and pending deadlines, and training on how to do grant seeking and educational grant programs, or education grant programs. Okay, so again, it's not like they're going to write it for you, but they are going to let you can, as part of your dues, cost you not a penny, to access a searchable database and to become aware of what's out there and what you're eligible for. Other than that, you have a lot of important things on your agenda tonight, and I think that's enough from school boards for tonight. Okay.
Thank you, Irene. Before we bring on Charlene Peterson, I just want to say Irene talked about the 3R training for new board members, incoming board members. That is a wonderful training opportunity. And if board presidents out there, your new board members, I always take mine and it's a great experience and they enjoy it. So just keep that on your mind for December 1st. At this time, I'd like to introduce Charlene Peterson with update from the field. She's our field service rep. Unfortunately, she's home tonight, but she's going to power through it. You got it.
Thank you so much. And like Bernadette said, I apologize that I am home tonight. I'm feeling better, but not well enough to be there. So again, just wanted to reiterate how amazing workshop was, that while I'm not get to see a lot of you tonight, I was able to, catch up with a lot of you during workshop. So that was great. And again, wanted to add the 3 R's. As much as, we are looking forward to training your newly elected members, we also invite any existing board members who want to come just kind of for that refresher. We did the candidates night on September 29th, and we had quite a few current board members there. So again, we're also looked at too, in that September 29th, we had about 100 people registered and only about 50 showed up, which is still a good turnout, but we wanted, we talked about whether maybe we'll also add a virtual component perhaps to try and capture those people that weren't able to come the last time. So the main thing that I wanted to do tonight was really recognize the work of the Mine Hill Township Board, recognizing them for earning their certified board status. Usually before I talk about what the board did, I'd like to first explain to the group the criteria for earning certification, because one of the things we found, especially here at Morris County, where the boards maybe tend to be a little bit competitive, right? In a good way, that it helps to kind of see what other boards are accomplishing and to kind of, hear about what the requirements are for this certification, with the hopes that you can take it back to your board and that your board might be interested in working toward it. So in a 4-year period, a board has to complete 16 hours of training together with more than a majority of its members present. Our policy department needs to do a wellness check to ensure your policies are up to date. Our labor relations department reviews one of your bargaining agreements, and then your board effectiveness is demonstrated through the board self-evaluation and also passing the governance section of CUSAC. And then, as we talked about mandatory training before, all of your members have to be current on their mandatory training. So once a board accomplishes all of that, you've then met the requirements. So, I'm also asked to a lot, so what is the benefit to a board becoming certified? Sounds like a lot of work, but it signifies to the community, to the staff, and really even to future board members coming on your board, that this is the culture on your board. This is the way your board does things, that you're a team interested in building shared knowledge, values, and a commitment to working together to improve student achievement. So I'm really proud of the journey that the Mine Hill Township Board has taken to be here, to be recognized for their work together as a board team. So the Mine Hill Township Board first earned certification in 2005. That some time had lapsed, and in 2019, the board made a renewed commitment toward training and set a board goal to earn board certification within 3 years. So here we are, which culminated in tonight's recognition of that work. The board and their administrative team, I can really say, work together. They respect one another, and they really do make it clear that their work is focused on the students. Every time I go there, I'm always hearing great things about their student work. Every year they hold an annual retreat to work together with the administration to set district and board goals. And the board holds itself and the superintendent accountable through the completion of the board self-evaluation. And they really have a comprehensive superintendent evaluation process. So I'm confident that the board's going to continue this training journey and work toward earning the Carol Lee Larson Master Award, which requires 10 more hours over 2 years. So it is with great pleasure that I ask the Mine Hill Township Board and any of their administration that are here tonight to come forward and be recognized. Unfortunately, I have their plaque here with me. But I intend to come to their board meeting on December 19th to present them the plaque, but again, would ask that they come forward and all of you clap for them and recognize their hard work.
I was going to keep it actually.
One Once again, congratulations to Board President Diane Morse and her board. Congratulations. Okay, before we get to our program, currently, huh? Oh, I'm sorry. You're not. Is she done?
No, she's done.
I think she froze. Charlene, are you done?
I am.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
No, thank you. Okay. I was just handed this by Rob, and he said that the Morris County Nominating Committee needs to be formed. Irene LaFave will be the chair as the past president, and we'll need 4 additional people from the 4 different regions in Morris County. Members can't serve and be nominated, and we will have an election on January 25th for the 8 directors, board of directors, the vice president, secretary, vice president of legislation, and president, and the New Jersey School Board alternate and delegate. But Rob, I think their positions are good until 2025. So anyone who's interested in serving on that committee, please, my email should be in the chat, right, Rob? All right, let me know and we'll get that committee together. Okay, thank you. Now, without further ado, I'd like to bring up Mr. Andy Brown. As I said, he's a partner with the prestigious law firm Adams, Gutierrez, and Latibador, and he will do current topics, HIB, and code of ethics. Andy, it's all yours.
If this were a regular board meeting, this is where we'd say, if you have someplace the kids need to go home and go to bed, feel free. And then we'll get on to where we need to be. I'm going to try to do this because I can't see the screen in my. Do this the right way. But a couple of things while we get started. First of all, thank you for having me. I do appreciate the invitation, and I hope I do you all justice. And thank you all for your service, because no one ever says that, or few people do, and you've been working really hard for the last couple of years, harder than normal to do this. And it's important work you're doing, and you're doing it voluntarily or for whatever free stuff you can get when you go to the convention.
So true.
Don't make fun. I tell too many stories, and I'll apologize because you got to find an amount of time. But years ago, I was on, thank you. Years ago, I got on one of the trolleys back to the hotel, and this woman gets on the bus with 2 big bags. Remember, those of you that have been around for a while, the IDE bags, the green and yellow, 2 of them full of stuff. And I looked at one of my colleagues and I said, it's got to be a brand new board member. And she said yes. And later that night, my firm had a party and the board member was there. And she looked at me and she said, I heard you, you know. And I said, uh-huh. And she said, and I'm a client. I said, well, I hope you stay one. But I said, but what part of what I said was wrong? And she said, none of it. Oh, she said, none of it. You were right. I said, next year you won't bring anything home, I swear. Because how many of you have learned that lesson? Anyway, my plug for for School Boards Association, I do this every time I speak. It's a great organization. It's great that you all come to these meetings. I know that I'm sort of preaching to the choir here because you're all sitting here, but bring it back to your boards. The fact that you can come to these meetings or go to the convention and share ideas, find out that you're doing something right, or find out that you could do something better. It's a wonderful opportunity, and you should take advantage of that. So I talked about the freebies. I have enough slides here to last us probably through your May board meeting. But it's always hard to talk about these things because I don't know how much you know. I don't know how much you don't know. So if you either start nodding off or I'm getting to, you know all this. Yeah, Bernadette, she's going to do it. So really all I have to do is pay attention to you, which is true all the time anyway. So I should know. I can also tell you that procedurally, I know boards do things differently. That's what makes us special. And I know lawyers do things differently. And as I told someone earlier, if lawyers all agreed, we wouldn't need lawyers anymore. So if you do something different in your district or one of your board attorneys said something else, I don't take that personally. Just let me know, and maybe they're right. Maybe we can find another way to do it. Second, I talk really quickly. So I might get through 3 hours worth of slides in 12 minutes. I might not. So if the other thing is, if you have questions, please ask. I don't mind being interrupted, and it will kind of break up the monotony for everybody else. So I'm here to talk about a HIB update because the HIB law changed, and we're trying to do some ethics stuff because the Ethics Commission issued, I believe it was one advisory opinion in all of 2022. Maybe nobody asked questions. One, let me be fair, one public advisory opinion in 2022. They might have issued a number of private ones, but we don't all get to see them. But take advantage of those advisory opinions. If you get them in timely, they get answers back fairly quickly, telling you what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. Also, the HIB stuff isn't particularly, I don't know that other than laws changing, I don't know that there's that much new on HIB. And the other piece of the School Ethics Commission is they issued, I think it was 7 decisions on October 17th. So while you were all arranging childcare and everything else and adult care for the convention, they were issuing a bunch of decisions. Some of them sort of surprised me, some of them didn't, but let's see if we can get started and make this work. This is really fun because now I have to figure out how to do the clicker and my slides at the same time. So the new HIB law was signed on January 10th, 2022, and it becomes effective this year. The initial reporting requirements, this is really going to be a riot for me. The initial reporting requirements remain the same. There's got to be a verbal report to the principal on the same day, which you already know, with the information that's received. The principal has to inform the parents and may discuss the availability of counseling and other services. There is a new requirement. Your principals have to maintain a written record of the date, time, and manner of the notification to the parents and guardians. So I guess that's one more form that our administrators are going to have to fill out. And if my thumbs and my forefingers get confused and the slides aren't the same, let me know. There are new DOE forms because there isn't enough that the DOE has done to make our lives interesting. Any prior reporting form, we have to use the state's form, and it's now in a numbered form that was developed by the Department of Ed. There are 2 of them. One is for staff and contracted service providers. The other is for families and caregivers. I'm not so sure that I don't believe that they're particularly different, but they're what's there. And the parents must have the means to complete their forms anonymously online, which at some level is a little bit disconcerting because how many of you respond to anonymous complaints? But you have to identify them. So the form, again, the form has to go to the principal within 2 days. Is that what that says? Okay. The copy of the form promptly has to go to the superintendent, and we all know what promptly means. And the original has to be kept on file in the building. If the board requests a hearing, the board gets a redacted copy of the form. So you don't get to know the students' names or ID number or any identification information either. I have copies of the form. I don't know if we can read them. Okay, good. Then we can skip through a bunch of slides. But they were nice enough to leave all these boxes in for us to fill out and check it so that we, at some level, I suspect, and based on my experience using the forms in various different districts, this is probably not a bad idea to have a standardized form so everybody collects the same information. You don't have to go looking for it later or asking the administration for it, because I'm going to guess that if you've had board level hearings, the board members have had questions for the administration about the investigation and who we talked to and how that worked. And I'm only seeing a couple heads shaking yes. So those of you that aren't shaking your heads, congratulations, because your administrators are doing good work. And so this is the second half of that form. There's another form for families and caregivers. And these I'm sure on the DOE website. And the forms are to be, again, we have to complete them online and they can be done anonymously. And because this is the state of New Jersey, the forms are in use, but we have till January 13th of 2023 if anybody has comments and questions and wants to address how these forms are, what we could do to make the forms better. Verbal reports. Did I get to that one right? Nope, not yet. Here we go. If a verbal report's made by a parent, again, the staff member who gets the report has to complete the form and submit it to the principal. I don't believe that's any different from what we're doing today. And the verbal reports have to be investigated anyway. You can't require a written report, which is slightly better than having an anonymous report investigated. And it's also consistent. You can't ignore a complaint. And I don't think any board member or administrator in his or her right mind would get a complaint of bullying and just not do anything with it. I don't think that's wise. And as your counsel, I would suggest that you don't do that. One of the things that's different that has changed is that the principal or his or her designee can make a preliminary determination before starting an investigation, taking all the allegations as true, whether or not the report is within the definition of HIB. And we'll get to that in a minute. Arguably, I would guess the belief is that that will save a little bit of time, because how many of you have gotten HIBs that you don't really think are HIBs by the time they get to your level? Otherwise, I'll keep going. So this does kind of make it a little bit easier. I think that was what the plan is. It does make, again, excuse me, the administrators usually understand what's conflict, what isn't, what meets the requirements. As a practical matter, again, if the answer is yes, you have to conduct a full investigation. If the preliminary determination is that there isn't, that it isn't HIB, that decision can be appealed. So if that decision is appealed to the board and then the commissioner, if the board overturns it, you have to conduct a full investigation anyway. I can't even account for how that would work. The Department of Ed, again, is supposed to be developing tools to assist principals in making these determinations. We'll wait for them probably after January 13th of 2023, but that's just me making a political comment. And I'm sorry. Clear cases, I say this a lot, and most lawyers do, better safe than sorry. You should all, just like we tell, if we get a report that a student has been touched or something went on, we tell you to call DIFAS because you're better off telling it's not DIFAS, it's DCP&P. You're better off having DCP&P tell you that they're not interested in taking a complaint and documenting that than not taking that complaint and not doing it. So generally speaking, I would suppose that most people are just going to do the investigation so they don't have to deal with the appeal process. And importantly, administrators who suspected a bullying situation and don't investigate it can be subject to discipline. So the new law and these preliminary determinations, some other things to know. Originally, they didn't want to include that provision in the statute. It's still available now, but it might come out later. We still need to keep the form and keep it on file. So the principal has to complete all those forms. On the form, there's a question about the principal gets to determine whether or not it's HIB. There's a little check mark on page 2 that says this is HIB or this isn't, and about that preliminary determination. The superintendent has to look at it again and make his or her own determination. And they can reverse that and send it back to the principal and tell them to conduct an investigation. And once the investigation begins, they have 10 days, as they always do, to complete that investigation. If it's no, the report is kept on file because it has to be. There's nothing that goes in the student record unless if it's determined, for example, that it's conflict, then the student is disciplined and it would go in the student's disciplinary record. Have I made you tired yet?
So Andy, you're saying that once this HIB investigation starts, it morph into a disciplinary investigation of code of conduct and not HIB.
Repeat the question for people virtually.
I'll try. No, I don't mean that in a bad way. So Mike's question was, can a HIB investigation morph into a disciplinary situation for a student, whether it's code of conduct or not? And the answer to the question is yes. Students can be disciplined as a result of HIB. It's supposed to be more, there's an R word that's just not coming to my, pardon me, restorative. That one works. Thank you, Paul. It's good that I know people in the audience who are saving. It's supposed to be restorative. Sometimes if the students are bad enough, there's got to be some punitive action taken. Student conflict can also be restorative or punitive. What works for the student? You have to look at the whole student and the whole situation. If it's disciplinary, it's going to go on the student's record. If it's restorative, it may or may not, depending on what the nature of the restoration is. Again, the superintendent has to report to the board annually the total number of incidents determined to be outside HIB, and you all get these reports twice a year, I believe now, in terms of what HIB cases of how many HIBs there were and how many were determined to be founded or unfounded. Yes, sir.
Harding is a K through 8 school. We've had instances where it was appealed.
Mhm.
And the real concern of the appeal was that that was going to be on the child's permanent record and they'd never get into Harvard or Princeton on it. And the question is, in that age group, kindergarten through 8th, does that move forward with the child?
I don't believe that it does. I believe that it's usually the high school records that go from one generation or move with them. On the other hand, if a student does something wrong in 4th grade and learns a lesson, it might be a great essay when they apply to Harvard, that this happened to me and I learned it. In addition, the parents always that they can review the student's records and ask to have things removed at some point in their career. And the superintendent can make that decision as to whether or not it should be or should be. Yes, Irene. I knew.
My understanding was the disciplinary records are not sent on to colleges or to employers. Are you saying that they are?
No, I tried not to commit to that.
Okay, all right, good. Because I thought that a college can ask for academic records, but I didn't think a college got copies of the disciplinary records.
I was hung up on the high school aspect of it, because if you transfer schools from one school district, then they move with you. Although, so from one high school to another, or one elementary school to another.
Harvard's not going to see it.
Probably not, unless you confess. You're never gonna ask me back here again. I can
No,
see.
never.
I'm gonna be sorry. All right, so when at the close of the investigation, the superintendent, as always, is notified of the results. In addition, and if they find out what the intervention has been done or the discipline or counseling have taken place, the superintendent can ask for additional information from the investigators and the ABS and so forth. It doesn't say anything what that additional information might be. It just says that you can ask for additional information. So I can't imagine what that could be. There are intervention plans for the first and second. Got it. There we go. For the first and second offenses, the investigation results are still placed in the student record, and the student again can be subject to remedial action, as we've already discussed. If it happens the third time or further, not only goes on the record, but the principal and the staff have to develop a student intervention plan, which the superintendent has to approve, which will include the remedial actions, discipline notes, may require parent and the student to attend a class related to reducing HIB behavior, because sometimes kids are just bullies and they don't learn. I'll let you catch up because the slides are long. I tried to keep them short, but you'll find out later I did not do as well. The superintendent and the principal have to, where it's necessary, you do have to notify the law enforcement of what goes on. If it violates a code of criminal justice, and that's subject again to the uniform memorandum that every board approves every year. And when things like that come up, that should be one of the things your administrators do check. You are required to maintain certain things on your district homepage, the district HIB policy, your contact info for the school climate state coordinator, guidance for parents on the ABBR Act, and they tell us that that's supposed to be updated soon. Contact info for the district anti-bullying coordinator, and the most recent HIB grade report, which I guess one of those things, again, that you approve every year. On each school's homepage, you have to have the guidance for the act on it. You need the contact info for the school anti-bullying specialist, and again, the school's most recent grade HIB grade report. Cyberbullying, as you know, is also a big issue. They've enhanced some criminal penalties for cyberbullying, and that's effective immediately. And they've also increased the fine for a parent if their child is adjudicated delinquent for cyberbullying and the parent fails to comply with the condition of a class or training that they were ordered to do. So we're now making parents responsible for their kids' actions, which I don't know is a terrible thing. This is where we start getting into what's old. So you'll have to tell me whether you want to hear it. I'll start. Yes, ma'am.
Paul almost fell off his chair.
I
Thank you.
noticed, but you would have caught him. It's okay.
I don't know about that. This is Diana from Dover. I was wondering if you could speak before we go into the basics about Megan's Law and how that impacted, if in any way, the changes that we're seeing.
If in any way it can do what?
Impacted the changes that we're seeing.
I don't know that it did. I don't know that it didn't. HIB and those sorts of issues can come up. Pardon me?
Did I say Megan's Law?
You did say Meg.
Not Megan's Law.
She meant Mallory's.
Yes.
It's the one from Morris County.
Two very different ones. You know, I suspect at some level Mallory's Law did affect it. At another level, we've now had the bullying statute for 4 or 5 years, if not longer, and we've learned from it. And the world has changed, so we're picking up on some of those things as well. So it's any number of things. HIB basics. So we talk about the types of behaviors that are included. It's any gesture, written, verbal, or physical act, and any electronic communication, and it can be a single incident or any number of incidents. I went ahead. I'm more. I thought it was. All right, I'm more. But no, I'm already past this. I got to go to the next one. So it can be a single incident or a series of incidents that take place. Some depends on when the parent complains or the student complains, or we notice it, or how serious it happened when it happened. The motivation for the behavior has to be reasonably perceived as motivated by an actual or perceived characteristic. And they're all the race, color, religion, you can read all of them, or any other distinguishing characteristic, just kind of a wide spread. It's not the intent of the bully. It's the way the victim perceives it that generates this. So we don't get into intent in bullying cases, and I believe we'll talk about that in a little bit. The behavior can take place on school property, on a school sponsored function. So if you take your children to a football game and it happens there, it can be there. Off school grounds, including cyberspace, or on a school bus. So if it has anything to do with school, you can be responsible. The behavior has to cause a substantial disruption or interference in the school or the student's rights and meet one of these requirements or conditions. A reasonable person should know that it would have the effect of physical or emotional harm to the student or damage to the student's property, or placing the student in fear of harm to self or their property, has the effect of insulting or demeaning a student or group of students, or creates a hostile education environment. And we'll come to this in a little bit, but yes, ma'am.
I have a question, Andy.
I'm surprised you waited this.
I know. If you go back to your other slide where it says off school grounds,
Yeah.
I have a question, and maybe you can provide some clarification. A little Johnny leaves school, and on his way home, he does not get home because it's a walking district. He stops at the playground, and little Johnny gets into an encounter, and he bullies little Mary. And it gets back to the school. Now, does it matter if they never made it home, or will it be different if they made it home? Would the school have to discipline or take action? So it's about little Mary and little Johnny walking home from school. And there was a lamb. There was a lamb.
What time is it? So first you need to determine whether it's HIB, right? Is it just Mary and Johnny don't like each other, or
True.
Johnny pulled Mary's hair and because you think she's adorable and doesn't know how to say it otherwise. So that's the first question. If it's HIB, I think you have to investigate it. I don't think you get a chance to say no, because you don't want to be in a position where someone tells you that you should have investigated it.
Right. And I understand that part. I want to know if it's a walking district, does it make a difference if little Mary and Johnny got home first and then went outside to play? Or if it happened before they got home on their way home?
Okay, there's a bunch of people out there who have the answer already.
Oh.
So just raise your hands. Who thinks it makes a difference whether they got home? This was an audience participation question.
The question was, do you think it makes a difference if they got home?
The question is, did the sheep make it home?
No, it doesn't make a difference if it's bullying, if the kids got home and then went back to the playground, or And I don't think anyone. No, don't listen to Bernadette.
It doesn't make a difference whether they got home or not home because it affects us even when the kids are in high school and they're going to a party on Saturday night and it's just, we're responsible. If it's bullying of a classmate, it's bullying of, and we're stuck with it.
If it impacts the educational process.
Right,
That's when you
exactly.
go to the slide that Bernadette made me back up from. That talks about impact on the student's mental health or impact on their education. So if it's going to affect, if Mary brings it to school, then there's an issue. And then it's him. On a kind of unrelated note, there's a case out there that a student is released from school and walks home from school, doesn't make it home and gets hit by a car on the way home and gets injured. Is the school responsible? Was the school responsible? In that particular case, the answer was yes, because they made no attempt to make sure that the student had someone waiting for them at home. So there are cases out there where getting home is or isn't important. I said it was completely, I did warn you before I finished the thought. Yes.
To follow up on that, if you want to apply HIB, it does not have to be on school grounds or during school hours. If it's HIB and it's between two students of the same school or between students at all,
right?
It can still be applied as HIB.
Yes.
So it does not have to be on the school, during school hours, or using school equipment.
Nope, it can be on the bus on your way to school. It can be at a football game. It can be on playground when Johnny and Mary were talking like after school.
It could happen at home.
Mm-hmm.
And
I believe it's a Ramapo Indian Hills case where there was an incident took place at a party on a Saturday night, and that was investigated and determined to be bullying.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so I think we did this one about creating a hostile educational environment, which brings me up to what's conflict and what's bullying, which is also a very difficult choice for many of us. And I know at least one of my clients has a major discussion every time there's a HIP case about making sure that it's not just conflict and it really is bullying. So conflict is equal power, people that know each other. Conflict is two children that used to be friendly and suddenly aren't for some reason that has nothing to do with the distinguishing characteristic. They could be close friends. It could be accidentally. Bullying is typically purposeful, and it's seeking power, attention, or material things. And it's one-sided. The aggression in bullying is typically intended to hurt someone physically or emotionally. Conflict is sometimes an attempt to resolve the problem. If those of you that have children and watch them fight, they're probably trying to resolve a problem. That's conflict. It's different from when bullying, where there's no effort to resolve the problem and all they want to do is beat up on their little brother or sister. Conflict is motivated typically by a disagreement, and bullying is motivated by a distinguishing characteristic. And I have these. There's, as I said, a ton of slides. If anybody wants to see them all and read them, just leave me an email address and I'll be happy to email this.
You can just, we'll email it to everyone.
Right, send it.
We'll
Even
email.
better if you've all signed up with your email, Ray will make sure it happens. Here we go for this conduct away from school grounds for all those people. And Mike, this is for you. School student goes goes beyond portal to portal. So again, if you're in a fight over a perceived sexual orientation that results in distraction in school, that would count. Race-based targets, even on a Facebook page or a Twitter account, and the student's grades begin to drop. That would qualify as bullying. And I think I did that one right. Okay.
So that was the answer to my question.
That was the answer to,
Beyond portal
yes, but I just had to get to the right slide. That's where the, again, to impose discipline for conduct away from grounds, there has to be a substantial disruption with the operation of school or with the rights of students. One of the things that I've been hearing more and more is that my child doesn't want to come to school anymore. I have to convince them to go to school. And it's easy for a parent to say that. And when the counselors start talking to the children, they don't seem to be having a problem and their grades haven't fallen. So that's one of those things that makes appeals a little more complicated and a little bit more difficult to deal with. So we have this social media issue. I don't know if how many of you have those kinds of cases, but there's a Supreme Court case that came out of the yeah, Mahanoy School District, I think that's in Pennsylvania. There was a cheerleader that didn't make the varsity team. So she and her friend took a photo of giving somebody the finger. It was posted to Snapchat with a caption that read, "I'll spare you. You can read it for yourselves." And added, love how me and another student got told we need a year of JV before we make varsity, but that doesn't matter for anyone else. So that was posted on Facebook. That Snapchat was sent to the cheerleading coaches, whether that was on purpose or by accident, we don't know. Coaches decided that she violated school and teams rules because she failed to show respect to the team, or the coaches, the rules are that you should avoid foul language and gestures, and that they should conduct themselves in a manner that doesn't tarnish the image of the school district. And the student was removed from the cheerleading squad for a full year because that's what we do. The Supreme Court ruled that under the First Amendment, schools can regulate speech less often when it occurs off campus. We're allowed to limit some of their speech on campus. I'll spare you that discussion. The school could not discipline BL for her off-campus conduct because there was no substantial disruption in the school. And while it was vulgar, her speech wasn't obscene or fighting. Off-campus speech will normally fall within the zone of parental rather than school-related responsibility. The schools have an interest in protecting even unpopular student speech, but the school did distinguish between cyberbullying, harassment, and breaches of school security devices. So I would imagine that means that if they do it online, it's one thing, but if they do it to themselves, not online, that's different. One of the other changes that the new law requires is that the policy has to include a statement that bullying is an unwanted aggressive behavior that may involve a real or perceived power imbalance, which is one of the things that we talked to earlier. And I would imagine most of you have approved amended or on first or second reading board policies on HIB recently. And I'm assuming if you use Strauss, Esme, or even school boards, they've included all of these things for you. Balance of power, when you look at that, you have to consider the context and relative positions of the aggressor rather than focusing on the characteristics. But again, in order to find HIB, you have to meet all of those characteristics, all of the criteria, and that includes a real or perceived characteristic. The imbalance of power alone doesn't appear to be enough. And quite frankly, I don't remember seeing a case that addresses what an imbalance of power in that instance would be. Your policy also has to contain a provision that school officials have to take into account circumstances of the incident when providing notification to the parents and guardians involved and conveying the nature of the incident, including the actual or perceived category that motivated the alleged offense. I suspect that's to give the parents a little heads up about what their child is being accused of so that we can address it properly and they don't get confused and think it's just two children that can't get along. Confidentiality has to apply to all the circumstances of all victims. This is particularly relevant today with the gender and sexual orientation issues. Your guidance counselors and administrators are trained to deal with these matters properly, and they need to counsel the student, all of the students in that regard. Your policy has to, because this was not included, I don't believe, in the original statute. The policy has to include a statement that HIB complaints against staff members can't be investigated by a member of the same bargaining unit as a staff member, which only makes sense. Those of you that have head custodians and custodians in the same bargaining unit, for example, you will find that in a disciplinary case, that the head custodian will not testify against one of their union members because it's a conflict for them. So this is no different from that. You have to use somebody at a different level, an administrator. If it's a wall-to-wall unit of educators and para-educators and custodians, one of your administrators would do it, presumably. Staff members also have a right to hearings before the board if they're accused of HIB. The investigations take place exactly the same way as they do otherwise. And those hearings, they get all the same information that a parent would get prior to a board level hearing. I'm going to skip the timelines for investigation because those that have to be complete within 10 days and who gets something within 5. I don't know that that's all important for all of you, but I put the slide in so that you know what we're missing. So there's got to be, at the end of this investigation, there's a report report to the Board of Education. And that has to take place no later than the next board meeting following the completion of the investigation. The district has to provide information about the investigation to parents, the guardians who are parties within 5 days after the results are given to the board. The information includes the nature of the investigation, whether HIB was found, whether discipline was imposed, or counseling services provided to address the HIB. You all probably have standard letters that your administrators send out to victims, to parents, whether it was or wasn't founded. And chances are those have been approved by your attorneys, and that's the right way to do it.
Is there a mechanism in writing? That notification, can it be a phone call? This has to be a formal written
I
US
would-
mail?
Yes, as a practical matter, you can, didn't remember getting the phone call. You're better off putting in writing. Emails, I believe, will suffice, but there are cases out there that, in fact, some of the ethics cases that we're going to talk about later, they were dismissed originally for failure to prosecute. And the parent said, I didn't get the notice. You emailed it and it didn't show up in my email account. So they dispersed with the failure to prosecute and actually went ahead with the case. So yes, put it in writing. The parents are going to request a hearing. They have to do it within 60 days after they get the letter from the board. Once the parents make that request, they have to hold it within 10 days of it. They have to hold the hearing within 10 days of it. Often that requires a special board meeting. So you just need to deal with that. Again, the board gets the redacted reports that we talked about earlier. The parents get the redacted reports as well. At that hearing, the board gets to determine the terms of the hearing, how it's going to work. A lot of places will put time limits on. You have 10 minutes to tell us what you're going to say. The board can hear from the anti-bullying specialist about the investigation, what recommendations for disciplinary services, and whatever else we've done to reduce these types of incidents. The board can hear from anybody. It can talk to the building principals. It can talk. Yes, Ray.
These are questions from the
room.
chat room.
I'll try.
You probably don't have this one off the top of your head. Any stats on how many students have been expelled for HIB violation?
I don't know that even the state keeps track of that, but I surely don't.
Yeah. And going back to not after school, but what about summer?
The same rules have to apply. If the student comes back to school in September and their grades have fallen, they don't want to go to school, then yeah, you'd have to go back and look at that.
Okay.
The parents, when they come in, can bring witnesses in to testify. The parents can bring an attorney if they wish. There's well, this says recent, but it goes back to 2016. The Commissioner of Education allowed a coach who was accused of bullying to have a hearing in front of the board with witnesses. That's not that unusual. I don't know how all of you conduct your HIB hearings at board level. You know, when I have them, I let the parents come in. First, we give the board an update and tell them go through the report again, make sure they don't have any questions for our anti-bullying specialist. We ask the parent to come in with their representative if they have one, give them a time. If there's a time limit, we tell them how long that is, ask them to make their presentation, ask them to leave. So the board can just determine whether or not they have additional questions for the parent, because sometimes the parents will say things that we didn't know. And then we go back and bring the parent back in to ask all those questions. It's not in your best interest, from my perspective, to get into it back and forth with parents during their appeal and asking them a bunch of questions, because you don't know what you never know what any of your colleagues are going to say. And it's just better to keep things under control in that sense. Oh, good. I'm not going to get through half of my stuff. This is important. The county superintendent can investigate. Here we go. The county sup can investigate a complaint of violation if the HIB isn't investigated or addressed at the local level. The county superintendent is allowed to get involved. In my experience, they do their best not to. I hope there's no county superintendents in here. But no, I actually have a case that's been really difficult. And the county superintendent did her best to try to explain to the parent how the process works and what we're doing and what we're not doing. And the parent just wouldn't accept it. I'm grateful to that county superintendent for trying. But I also know that I'm going to be before the OAL at some point in 2023. And I don't know that we're ever going to resolve the problem because the parent wants us to redo our curriculum. And that the OAL can't order us to do that. Another important case, and this again goes to the information that the parents get prior to the hearings. They have to get the investigative report, any additional reports, the letters, any letters from the other parent. And again, it ought to be redacted for student confidentiality purposes. This is also incredibly important for almost any board decision. If someone is going to challenge a board's decision before the Commissioner of Education, the standard that they look at is whether the decision was arbitrary, capricious, or unreasonable, which is a pretty low bar to meet. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's assumed that you're making the right decision. So your decision won't be disturbed unless it has no reasonable basis or there's no rational connection between the facts and the decision that was made, or if you somehow otherwise violated the law. So it's fairly uncommon, I would say, to get a decision, a HIB decision overturned. And I'm going to say that now. And here we go. So there's just a couple of HIB cases, and because some of them I like. This is the hair dyed one. Yep. So one student told a colleague that, thank you, that he recently dyed his hair and got a haircut that he looked like Donald Trump. The district determined that it was HIB because hair color is a distinguishing characteristic. The ILJ agreed, saying that all elements were met. The commissioner reversed. It was on school grounds. There was a distinguishing characteristic. It was insulting. It insulted and demeaned the student, but there was no evidence of substantial disruption in the student's educational program. What? No, it wasn't him. He didn't. You remember we said you have to meet all those criteria, and one of them is it has to affect their schooling. This is another one from from 2021. There's just a question. Sorry, because I'm so busy trying to get my teeth to work. So we had one student question another about dressing and clothing that was typically associated with female when the first student had previously been known to students as a boy. It doesn't talk about how old that student is, at least in this slide. The student apparently continued to question the second student at least once after being told not to stop. The board found that it was bullying. The ALJ reversed it because he thought there was only one incident and he had some concerns about curiosity versus animus. And I guess the younger the students are, the more likely that is to happen. The commissioner reversed and said that the board's decision wasn't arbitrary, capricious, or unreasonable. And the appellate division remanded this because they wanted to make some credibility determinations about the witnesses telling the truth. And the commissioner ultimately upheld the board's decision that it was him. Again, the important thing about this LK case is the student's age is to be taken into consideration for the consequences, but isn't relevant to whether or not HIB has been committed. And whether that the substantial disruption, whether you can feel that is enough. The commissioner noted that other cases have found that substantial disruption occurs when the targeted student was upset, embarrassed, or uncomfortable. And those cases, as I recall, don't distinguish about whether or not it happens on one day, whether they're uncomfortable for a day or uncomfortable for a week. I'll skip the teacher case unless any of you have a real interest in finding out what happens to that, because I want to get at least to the new ethics cases. This is a mean fifth grader story. Is this CA, right? Yep. Student missed a day of school and they lost an attendance contest, and that meant they missed out on a pizza party. I feel bad about that. Students also felt bad that there were comments about smell in the cafeteria that he thought were about him. The board found that there wasn't him. And the ALJ found that there was a thorough investigation. There was back and forth of unkind words, and there wasn't a distinguishing characteristic, just conflict. And the commissioner affirmed that because the decision wasn't arbitrary, capricious, or unreasonable. But here's a question. What happens if the absences were due to a serious medical condition? Would that make it HIB? It would be a much closer case. Let's put it that way. That, yeah. The BC case, the interesting thing was the comment that the student was alleged to have made. He thought he said it to himself and instead he said it out loud. I missed it?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. The student thought that, I'll say it again because now that you can catch up. The student, it's one of those, oh, did I say that out loud? And that was his defense. It didn't work. We'll skip the Sayreville cases because I really want to get to some ethics stuff before today's over. And I only have 15 more minutes. Here we go, the board ethics update. Sure.
Something about teacher bullying.
Yes.
Oh, so apparently one way to go, and I know this from our board's experience, is that if a teacher does something inappropriate towards students, you can have, you just said the new name for DIFAS, so it's not DIFAS.
DCP&P, I learned that.
You can ask them to investigate. And that really helps the district take a step back because now you can rely on their determination as to what really happened. They will conduct the investigation, what really happened, and whether action should be taken, even whether criminal charges are due. And that really allows the board to take a step back and absolve itself of responsibility for investigating something that could be very sensitive. And I'm kind of paraphrasing it, putting it all into my words, but that seemed to work well in a case that we had. And I don't know how you feel about that. Or if I'm clear.
So the short answer is yes, it's always a good idea to call DIFAS and let them do their work, but your work is it. I see, I got it right once the last time. DCP&P, thank you, Ray. The board's responsibility doesn't stop with the DIFAS or DCP&P investigation.
We relied on it.
You
We
could.
relied on the outcome.
Well, that's fine, but that doesn't mean that whatever DCP&P found was unfounded or not established, doesn't mean that by virtue of board policies or your handbook, that the teacher didn't do something wrong or didn't do something worthy of investigation. So while you can take a step back and let DCP&P do its job, that doesn't mean that you don't get to stop and say, you did it anyway. Whatever they determined is independent of what we're about to do to you. So
Yeah, if in this case, that might have been the case if there was no finding from them, but they did have a finding.
well,
So
if
it
they
was
have
substantiated.
if
in
they
other words.
substantiate something, then it's a whole lot easier.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that if it's not, that you shouldn't do anything.
So I think if we're having an HIV investigation into your teacher, we should get to notify their parents.
Remember the good old days when the student did something, when you did something wrong when you were in school and your parents assumed that you were right? Or I'm sorry, the teacher was right. I had that was right in my head. It just didn't get all the way back down right. So the board ethics update, conflicts of interest. Well, there's a whole lot of stuff that I'll skip through because I'm told I have an 8:30 cutoff and that leaves me, what, 9 minutes?
Exactly.
Because you'll all put your coat. I told Charlene is out there still, that I would stop in mid-sentence if I had to.
I'm still here. Yep.
Thank you. You weren't paying attention though, were you, Charlene? All right, so collective bargaining and issues related to the superintendent. There's I believe it's A22417. It's an advisory opinion from the School Ethics Commission that includes this table or something, looks very much like it in terms of what the conflicts can be at the bargaining table and dealing with your superintendent searches, evaluations and contracts. If you're a member of the statewide, the NJEA, as a board member, you can vote on the contract when everything's done. I'd suggest that you shouldn't, but that's just me. You can't participate in negotiations clearly, but you can vote to ratify. If your spouse is in the district, you can't participate. You probably shouldn't vote. And here it is, because I'm down to 8 minutes and I can't keep talking because you won't learn stuff. Interesting, the advisory opinion from the Ethics Commission I told you about earlier relates to the Janus decision. I don't know if any of you remember hearing about that, where you no longer have to pay the agency fee, the representation fee. Board member sent the Ethics Commission a question and says, look, I'm in the bar, I think he was a bus driver actually. I'm not a member of the union, I don't pay dues, does this mean I can't participate because in negotiations, because I'm a member, because it's the same statewide bargaining unit group? And the law says union member, and he's not a member. So the Ethics Commission kind of changed that, and it's not union member anymore, it's a member of the bargaining unit. So as long as you benefit from the collective bargaining agreement, you can't be on the, you can't participate in the negotiations. Issues relating to the superintendent, I think I went a little too far. Yeah. Okay. If you
Question.
yes, ma'am.
So Walter Barbero from NetCon. My wife is a paraprofessional at NetCon school, so I abstain from all the voting for the payments and stuff like that. So she's not part of the bargaining unit. So does that still affect?
Your board president is right there.
I know.
So I'm going to guess for purposes of this discussion that the decisions that are made with respect to paraprofessional salaries are somehow connected to the decisions that are made for the teacher salaries. And to the extent that that's true, you should probably not participate in teacher negotiations.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, you're welcome. So here's a question for you, because this happens in one of my districts has 3 board members who have relatives working in the district, and they abstain on the payroll vote every board meeting. How many of you think that's required? It's not, they won't vote on the payroll. When they get to the bills list, they don't vote on, they abstain on that resolution because their family members getting paid.
I think it's fair. I think it's fair.
I abstain from that.
Okay. How many of you would abstain or think you should? I'm just curious. By the way, I've told them this, that they don't have to abstain because they're not getting any, again, when we look at the School Ethics Act, they're not getting any benefit that doesn't inure to any other member of any other employee of the district in that position. But I just wanted someone to back me up when I say that.
Hold on.
The financial statements, make sure you file them. Antoine, was that a question?
No, I'm just gonna make a comment.
Go ahead.
You were looking for someone to back you up, and I can self-disclose that I was actually the recipient of an ethics charge on that very same matter. And the SEC ruled that even though the person filing the complaint against me did not provide sufficient evidence to show that I violated the School Ethics Act, even had he did, it would not have amounted to me violating the School Ethics Act by voting on a number. So actually, fact, on payroll as long as it's a number.
All right. By the way, I know we talked about training much earlier in this. I didn't, but Danielle and Irene did, and Ray. I've had cases where board members didn't get their training, and the School Ethics Commission has filed orders to show cause to have them removed. So you get plenty of reminders, don't ignore them, especially if you can be trained from home. So I'm going to try to get to, I got way ahead of myself. So I was told that the internet was a big issue that we needed to deal with. So let me deal with, I think I went too far. Does that say 7118 on the top?
Yes.
Good. So this actually involved a Morris County district, and a board member wrote an op-ed endorsing 4 candidates in the board election and arguing against the candidacy of a 5th candidate. SEC noted that board members have First Amendment rights, and they've allowed endorsements and letters to the editor with disclaimers. But social media, of course, has created a whole set of problems none of us probably anticipated. And they took this opportunity to tighten the disclaimer rule. The board member accused in his tome, accused board members of being poor communicators, subject to outbursts and emotions, and not being prepared at a board meeting. Imagine that. The board member did include his disclaimer that the author is writing this endorsement on his own personal belief and his opinions are his own. The School Ethics Commission said that that disclaimer was insufficient and endorsed the following disclaimer, which you can see up there and is available in this case. The reason that is because they wanted to point out that a disclaimer doesn't say protect you from saying whatever you want. There are limits. If it is, you can't disclose, you can't hide behind the disclaimer, even if it's appropriate, because in this case, the board member made multiple references, not only to his position on the board and to board matters generally, but he talked about things that were taking place at the board level, and which really made it much more personal than just, I think John Smith is a good candidate. The board member was censured. The commissioner upheld that decision, but reduced the penalty to a reprimand. There are some other recent ethics decisions and about this. Well, this one involved conduct at a board meeting where board members made a statement at a meeting in support of the Palestinians and the Free Palestine movement. They didn't think that was appropriate. One of the board members said children should be free to go to school without worrying about their homes being destroyed and their neighborhoods ethnically cleansed. Complaint alleged that the statements were anti-Semitic and anti-Israel, negatively impacted the Jewish children in the district, exceeded board policy making, the board's policy-making duties, and made personal promises that could compromise the board, and showed that they had surrendered their judgment to special interests. Anybody want to guess what the School Ethics Commission did? They did throw it out. The statements were controversial and likely could be perceived, but the board's policy allowed, in this district, the board's policy allowed board members to make personal comments at the meetings on any matter, as long as they made it clear that their opinion was their own. The internal disclaimer rule. And no board action was taken or even considered regarding these statements, which is also very important. I'll skip the BLM thing because it apparently,
Yeah, it's on that.
which one are we on?
You went back, go back. Yeah, there. You talked about Black Lives Matter?
I was, but I was going to skip that one because
Oh, you skip it.
I've got 1 minute left.
Okay.
So I'll do it this way because I'm assuming you all want to go home and you don't want to hear me talk anymore. Pardon?
Well, we have one person.
I don't know what you have going on at home, but if I'm better, we're all in trouble. So let me.
That wasn't burned
It
down.
wasn't me. It was her.
Yeah, and I've known Bernadette for a really long time, and you don't just simply outvote Bernadette. It's just not that easy. I'll thank you again because I'm hoping that you all learned something from this, and I may have stepped on it myself. So there were actually a couple of cases that I thought were fun that came out recently, and I'd like to see. There we go. So as I said, the School Ethics Commission issued, I believe it was 7 decisions on October 17th, and they dismissed almost all of them for assorted sundry reasons, not the least of which is the regulations about the code of ethics for board members actually include what you have to prove in order to prevail in those cases. And these and the complaints don't include that information. They're either personal opinion, I think this, they just don't go far enough. Part of that, I believe, is the function of a lot of the people that file these complaints are just people. They're not lawyers, they don't know how to draft things, and they just want to vent, and they want to get it, thank you, they want to get it out of their system. And that makes things for lawyers and other people really, really hard to follow. You know, if you've got, I just had the bullying case that had a parent who filed with the commissioner. What she sent was, I don't mean, it was it was impossible to answer in a coherent manner. And I wrote to the commissioner's office and said, what am I supposed to do? Because this is going to, if I have to answer this, I'm not sure how, and it's going to go to an administrative law judge who's going to try to figure it out. It's just not right. And their response was, it's a pro se complainant, do the best you can. So I did, and we don't have any, but this is what, and it's not disparaging. Everyone has a right to do what they have a right to do. It makes it a little complicated. And if you ever read a School Ethics Commission decision, they're all formatted exactly the same way. And they're really hard to follow because they talk about, first they talk about the procedural history, then they talk about the facts, then they talk about each individual, they list all the provisions of the School Ethics Act and Code of Ethics that are violated, go back, repeat the positions of the parties that were argued, then they do, it just seems really difficult to follow. in terms of what's going on. But I thought you'd appreciate this one because in executive session, one of the board members asked another if she wanted to get punched that night.
Oh, it was girls?
It was women, actually. And of course, the response was, "Are you threatening me?" And they said, "Nope." Well, they didn't say no. They just repeated the question. None of the board members reacted except the one who joined the complainant when they went to the state police to file a police report. They led a violation due to the threat, and since attendance at the board meetings is mandatory, the intimidation factor compromises the integrity of the board and keep people from participating. And it violated the part that said, "I recognize that authority rests with the Board of Education and won't make any personal promises that may compromise the board." Again, in order to prove this violation, you have to show that the board member made a personal promise or took action beyond the scope of her duties that by its nature had potential to compromise the board. Much to no one's surprise, the complaint was dismissed. But to be fair, I give the Ethics Commission credit. The comment was inappropriate, and it wasn't condoned, but it wasn't aggressive and it wasn't screamed, and no physical restraint was necessary. And and they noted that the comment is best resolved as an internal governance issue, which is your board president and your leadership talking to people and calming them down. And if it's necessary by law enforcement, but it's not an ethics violation. And this goes back, and I think we'll get to another case that works like this, but there was another case involving parents, a board member who left the podium. They would recess to go into executive session. And a member of the public had made a comment during the public portion of the meeting. And the board member went to the back of the room on her way out. She was allegedly going to see her parent, but she stopped off at the member of the public and chastised her. In the course of chastising her, she bumped into her with her notebook. That was an ethics violation. Because it wasn't physical, but it took place. It was out. It wasn't an executive session. It was in the public, and it served a purpose. And I think there's another slide where this is better addressed, but it wasn't quite as innocuous as, "Do you want to get punched?" It was a little more violent than that. Again, this was another long-winded charge about someone. Member of the public complained about the acting superintendent tuition reimbursement, and also and the board members took offense at that. Board members also claimed that this member of the public that filed prior ethics complaints against them and posted on Facebook comments that related to this woman's support of Muslim action. There's a word. It's got to be 8:30 because my brain turned off. Yes, it was the group that she was supporting inspired terrorism and are anti-Semitic in much the same way as the other complaint alleged it. And here's where we get So I love the red. The red makes it much easier. So in this case, the School Ethics Commission actually just clarified some of its earlier decisions about social and other forms of media. And the Randolph case, which was the one that we talked about earlier with the 4 candidates, it can be considered an action, but you need competent and credible evidence to support the violation. And merely because you engage in social media activity, it doesn't violate the act. But if a member of the public could perceive that that you're speaking in your official capacity or pursuant to your official duties, there could be a violation. And that depends largely on the content of the speech and whether or not it's connected in any way to your board activity. It doesn't want to move. My computer is now telling me it's time to stop. All right. We did that one. Another fun. Oh, the disclaimer. Randolph teaches us that if substance of the statements would lead to a reasonable member of the public to believe the school is acting in their official capacity, that would lead to a finding. And Bernard, are you getting up because you're tired, or are you getting up because I should be done?
Thank you, right there.
Okay. And again, the School Ethics Commission is not stupid. They acknowledge that if you don't like how a board member conducts themselves in a public meeting, you get to vote. And that's how you stop them from behaving that way. It's the community that decides whether they're best suited to serve their students. CR 5552 talks about a board member that asked the superintendent to about a poster that was in a hallway of healing and about police activity. And they were accused of taking private action that compromised the board because the member of the public believed that they told the superintendent to pull the poster down. And the commission said, again, there's no credible evidence. They have to prove it. And they didn't, but equally important, they found specifically that the poster was removed, but that doesn't mean that they did it because the board member told them to. The board member did exactly what it's supposed to. He got a complaint from a constituent and referred it to the chief school administrator, who determined what was appropriate to do. And absent factual evidence that the board member actually tried to resolve the complaint himself anywhere and dismissed the complaint.
Are you exhausted?
You should be, if I'm not. So there was one last case that, because I think this will come out, I'll skip to the end about this one. Board member complained, a member of the public complained that a board member did not support a contract that was placed before the board for a shared services agreement. And they didn't, am I on 4922? Yes. And that she also in that instance claimed that amongst other things that the board member divulged that the member of the public was on family leave at the time. Anyway, the commission determined after reading, I can't tell you how many pages of complaints, that a board member is free to, among other things, ask questions about any proposed matter. What is this? If there's something on the agenda, you're allowed to ask questions about it publicly. And that's actually what this complaint was. She was objecting to the fact that the complainant was objecting to the fact that the board member was asking questions and speaking against the resolution to approve the contract. Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
Asking questions is part of what a board member has to do. Although we all know, everybody have that one board member that asks so many questions, you don't. But it's none of you, right? All right. So you're entitled to get this information. You're entitled to ask information to help make your decisions. The fact that the board members' rationale and vote, along with the votes of other board members, may have been unpopular doesn't mean, based on the facts that they alleged, that you violated the act. How cool would that be? I don't like your vote, so therefore you violated the School Ethics Act. It happens everywhere. All right, so we've got, I think this might be almost the last one. So I'll get to, we should be okay. And if we're not, I'll stop anyway. We had a board member, this is, we have 5322?
Yeah.
All right, am I on the one that said, do we actually know what the member of the public said? During the public portion of the board meeting, residents said that other members of the board admitted that they made plans to, we'll say, screw over the Booster Club because they conspired with the acting superintendent to confiscate money they'd raised. Following the resident's public comment, respondent publicly stated that he wanted to remind our public that when you come here at this, it's just not some bar in Appalachia where you drop the F-bomb and scream at people. That's disgusting. Every board has one. The following day, the board member posted on Facebook, speaking as a private citizen disclaimer, felt like we were a local dive bar closed early. So the patrons came to the board meeting. Everyone should have to wash their hair in jeans before they come up screaming and dropping the F-bomb. It was unsightly and nauseating. Well, he had to vent. Let's let him vent. So amongst other things, the disclaimer, the petitioner, the complainant said the disclaimer on his post was incomplete. And he violated the ethics act. The open-minded, kind, caring individual who should be in charge of shaping the minds of children. And his disparaging comments set a poor example for our students, and insensitivity to others is conduct unbecoming a member of the board. Yeah, I'm sorry. And it shows board decision-making. And by not stopping him, the board gave the impression that they condone this. So this complaint was dismissed as well. The board members appeal to the public to be mindful of proper decorum at a board meeting following a resident's use of profanity, nor his post on social media, assuming it was even made as in his capacity as a board member, constitute a decision contrary to the educational welfare of the students, and nor was it a personal promise, nor was it an action beyond the scope of his duties that had the potential to compromise the board. And even if this is another good one, even if the subject was on social media was crass, insensitive, and boorish, what a thesaurus. And the respondent could clearly have used more appropriate and respectful language to reclaim order at the board meeting. A violation of the code can't be substantiated without the necessary factual evidence, and they were compelled to dismiss the complaint. And again, although the respondent's gross error in judgment can't be penalized in committee, it doesn't mean that his words were not offensive or that the commission condones its speech. It's incumbent upon the community to determine whether at the time of an election, an individual who repeatedly makes the kinds of comments at issue here should be elected to serve the needs of the districts. Although we can sanction a school official who violates the law, the members of the community have the parents the power to choose individuals who they feel are most fit to serve. I'll stop here because thank you all for your 14 extra minutes of patience.
Thank you, Andy, very much. Again, Ann is the partner with the law firm Adams, Gutierrez, and Lottie Bedore. We want to thank you for, do I say it wrong?
You do, but I don't want to
Okay,
correct
all
you in
right.
front of everyone.
Thank you. One more time, let's hear it for Andy. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, very much, actually.
At this time, I'd just like to wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving. Have a wonderful holiday season, and we will see you virtually on the screen June 25th. Thank you all for coming. Good night now.